about various people and how they fitted into the story. The story of Naaman coming to faith. What about Naaman's wife? What sort of person do you think she was?
Obedient wife.
Obedient?
Cared about her husband.
She cared about her husband.
She was probably a good mistress because the servant girl spoke to her and told her these things.
She was a good mistress because the servant girl was prepared to speak to her. I rather like Naaman's wife because I think that must be true, that she was a good mistress. And the girl who served her respected her and cared for her. How about the relationship between the two kings, the king of Aram and the king of Israel? Not so good. What was wrong with it?
Probably Joseph, if I can be honest.
Yeah. Joram clearly didn't trust the king of Aram. Why was the king of Aram prepared to give so much as a gift?
Naaman was his favourite soldier, I suppose.
Because Naaman was so important to him. Yes. So there wasn't a relationship of trust, was there? Intertribal animosity there. Certainly Joram didn't trust his neighbouring monarch. Okay. What about Elisha's behaviour? How do you read Elisha's behaviour?
I wonder whether Elisha wanted to point to God rather than himself, and therefore sort of suggests he did something without Elijah being present.
That's interesting, yes. Healing at a distance. Do you remember Jesus did that as well? Still does. Yes, good. Very good. Yes, so he didn't turn up for the meeting, he sent a messenger. Right?
He wanted to promote humility in Naaman because he obviously was a proud man, because he thought he should have been visited by the prophet himself. And it also is a real expression of God's power, that he didn't have to actually invoke his name. He could just...
Right. Yeah. So...
magnificent man, really.
Yes, so he wanted to point out that you didn't have to have all this glory and whatnot in order to be healed by God. Okay. Anything else about Elisha's behaviour?
He was a bit up himself.
I
think he was a bit up himself.
Who, Elisha?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, he was a bit up himself. There's an opinion. I think so. Did he take any payment? I wonder why he didn't do that. Labourer is worthy of his hire.
Because he believed in God.
Facilitated God doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? He didn't do the healing, God did. So God should have been paid rather than him. That's pretty good, I thought. What about the girl? How do you read the girl's character? Sorry? Faith? Yes, faith that God could do the job. I wonder where that faith came from. She'd been captured. God had let her down. She was a slave, ripped from her home. What else can we think about the girl?
She's loyal.
Loyal to?
Both of them.
Yeah.
Both of the masters.
Okay.
And to God. Very loyal to God.
Very loyal to God.
She was very loyal to God. She was suggesting to a powerful man of a different faith that he should put his trust in Elisha.
Yes.
That's quite a bold thing to do if you're a servant in a household, isn't it?
Yes.
Very bold.
She was very forgiving for what happened to her.
She must be. Must be. But that comes back to how she's being treated, and my guess is that she was being treated very well by Naaman and his wife. Anyway, so we can pick things out and how these things influence eventually Naaman's effective conversion. They're all part of a chain, aren't they? What about Naaman himself? How do you read him?
He was hedging his bets, wasn't he? He was saying when he still goes down to the Temple of Rimmon, well, I suppose he did say, "May the Lord forgive me," that he goes there, but he was sort of hedging his bets.
Yes.
He was expecting to be treated in a certain way. He had his expectations of giving his pomp and ceremony,
Yes.
laying on of hands.
Yes.
He was a proud leader.
He was a proud man. He was certainly a proud man. But what sort of a leader was he? Do we get any clues as to what sort of a leader was he? How did his troops regard him? What did they call him? Father. Father. I have a picture in my mind of Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, who was a very arrogant man, a very proud man, and yet his troops absolutely adored him. He was that sort of person. I think this guy was similar, brilliant military tactician, a very proud man, but somebody that people respected and adored. If you read the biography of, and I've got that sort of picture of Naaman as being that sort of person. Okay, now each of those things and people were links in a chain, and eventually Naaman comes to, what does he recognize? Our God is a great big God. Our God is almighty. Naaman comes to recognize, at least partly recognize, there is a clue that he doesn't quite fully recognize that. And what's the clue? What about his mules and what they could carry?
Oh, soil.
Now, why did he do that? Why did he want to take some soil from Israel in bags on the back of his mules? To worship on him. Why was that important?
He wants to worship the God of Israel.
Because he still thought that God was theirs. And gods were very, very geographically limited in those days. People had their tribal gods. And he hadn't quite got through to the point of seeing that Jehovah is the Almighty, is God throughout. And it's really interesting that only the people of Israel saw God like that. All the other surrounding civilizations saw God as being local, as being relevant to them and not to other people. Only that center of monotheism was growing and held together in Israel, coming through to the New Testament with Jesus. It's really very interesting. So the roles of various people, the girl, for instance, must have been brought up to trust in God, and that trust wasn't destroyed when she was captured. She still held on to that, and she passed it on. And what about the soldiers? Naaman's soldiers. They're part of the chain, aren't they? Because Naaman was going off in a huff, and his soldiers said, "Father, do be sensible about this. don't be an idiot. Please, go and do what you're told. And he did. So one thing we get out of this is that the chain of events, some illness, if leprosy hadn't struck Naaman, then he would never have gone through this process. So illness, sadness, tragedy, being captured, the girl being captured, tragedy in lives can bring a sort of depth of spiritual understanding. And Naaman is gradually edged towards faith in the true God. Now, the other thing is, you've already referred to it, Naaman was in a bit of a fix. What was it?
He had to go to the temple with the king.
Yes, he had to go to the temple with the king, and it was not Jehovah's temple, it was the temple of Rimmon, who happened to be Aram's god at the time. So, what does he do? What's he do? He asks for forgiveness for doing it. He says he seems to think he's got to do it. He asks for forgiveness, and what's Elisha's response? Go in peace. Was Elijah right? Can we compromise our faith? Are there circumstances in which it is right to compromise our faith? What do you think? What do you think? In public life today, people in public office very often have to compromise their faith, or they think they might have to compromise their faith. Listen to these things from, these comes from the website, some cases that Christian Concern is dealing with. Sarah Coute is a Christian nurse who was fired by the NHS for talking to patients about her faith and occasionally offering prayer while helping them to prepare for surgery. Sarah's job involved asking about patients' faith as part of a pre-assessment questionnaire. She was fired. Does this mean that Christians can't work in the NHS anymore? Christy Higgs, a secondary school pastoral care worker, was dismissed for gross misconduct after a parent reported two of her private Facebook posts that raised her concerns about the new relationships and sex education. Dismissed. Does this mean that Christians with certain views can't be in the education service anymore? Richard Page was removed as a magistrate for saying that a child's best interests lie in being raised by a mother and a father. So can Christians with certain views of marriage and so on not be magistrates anymore? Felix Ngoli, a Christian student, was removed from his university social work course after he made comments on his personal Facebook page in support of the biblical teaching on marriage and sexual ethics. Felix was told that by posting his comments on Facebook, he may have caused offence to some individuals and had transgressed boundaries which are not deemed appropriate for someone entering the social work profession. So, can there be no Christians in social work anymore? Pastor Paul Song served as a volunteer chaplain for 19 years in HM Prison Brixton, a prison that our son-in-law, knows well, and not because he was an inmate, but because he was medically responsible for the people there at one stage in his career. Paul Song ran several internationally respected Christian courses, and many prisoners became Christians as a result. After a Muslim imam took over as senior chaplain in 2015, Paul was restricted and then banned from ministering in the prison. So can Christians not go and minister to prisoners anymore?
The Muslims are taking over. And we're allowing it.
Well, that's a view, but so what are we to do? Is it right to compromise? Question. In your career, in your work, in wherever you are there issues about which you would compromise or have to compromise? I must say, if I was a headmaster today, there are issues that I might feel very uncomfortable about. So let's pray for people in public office. I have in my mind a young man who has come out and very clearly as a Christian. He spoke clearly at the Easter festival from the stage about his Christian faith. In the next issue of Grapevine, he will be interviewed, and he's very clear about his Christian faith. Next year, if everything goes as expected, he will be our mayor. What will he have to go to as mayor, representing the people of Hastings, which might be difficult for him? Is he right to go to them? Are you right to criticise him if he does? And so many Christians, I'm afraid, are very critical sometimes of people in public office who they think have compromised their faith. And some of the nastiest letters that Michael Foster used to get was from people who felt that he had compromised his faith. And he found that very difficult. People in public life need our prayers. So,
Roger, can I just say something?
Yes, Carl.
The command was to love one another. We didn't say, if they fit this box or they fit that box. So when people are doing it in public service, often it is that love of community and people.
Yes. But it's difficult.
It is difficult.
Yeah.
But you can see
Yes.
people do compromise.
Exactly.
It comes through.
Exactly.
It's the most important.
Because people want to feel that they are loving others.
And that will shine through and could lead to
Yes.
other things.
Yes. Like the little girl in Naaman's story. So, a lot to think about from this reading, and I'm sorry I've taken too much time. So let's turn to prayer.